Hello, I'm Dirk Dusharme, Quality Digest Editor-in-Chief. Last month, Quality Digest CEO Jeff Doerr and I attended ASQ's World Conference on Quality and Improvement in Anaheim, California. We conducted several interviews with their two CEOs and both boards of directors. We think you're going to find these interviews pretty enlightening. We'd like to thank ASQ for making everyone available for our questions, and we hope these interviews will provide insight and support to our readers as they navigate the future, especially as it applies to their own careers.
Well, ERM plus business innovation. You want to talk about going deep? I mean, the society needed it.
You're all ready to go. Okay. Well, Ann Jordan, CEO of ASQ, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Before we get started, let's talk a little bit about kind of our history of quality. Quality Digest has been doing this for a long time. So back in the 80s, our recollection is that kind of at the heyday of the quality movement, almost everybody had a title in their name. Certainly there was VPs of quality and quality managers and quality this and quality that. Almost everybody had quality in their title. And what we've seen over the last, 10 years, 15 years, is that has slowly started to diminish, and it seems like the emphasis is less on we need a quality fill in the blank, as opposed to we need our managers and our engineers and so on and so forth to have a quality skill set that goes with their regular job. That doesn't mean the quality department's disappeared, but it does seem like there are fewer people going into quality. Does that resonate with you at all in terms of what ASQ sees?
So you can look at it as a glass half full or a glass half empty. I'm an optimist. I'll start by saying that. So in one respect, you can say maybe those titles are going away. Quality isn't as prominent, but at the same time, you're saying quality is therefore in every single job at a certain level. It's expected. And so when you look at that kind of through that lens as a quality professional, how does that resonate? And then as the quality society, how does that resonate? I think those that identify themselves as true quality professionals become a much more cohesive crew. You see that in your membership, and they have a very distinct mindset about quality. The other side of that then is, what does that mean for us as a society? Well, we need to be able to cater to those subject matter experts of quality and have community and have opportunity for them. At the same time, we need to develop tools to train and provide quality to those that maybe just want that as one aspect of their job. From kind of an evolutionary standpoint, then, that makes us as ASQ need to be mindful of, you might have this smaller, hardcore quality group, but your opportunity to upskill and your opportunity to educate and to bring them together in that type of a fashion is greater. For ASQ in particular, that has meant in the last 2 years, we better take a hard look at e-learning and how that modern learner wants the experience to come to them and to be personalized. How do we reach organizations and have available micro-learning, things that go into their own LMS, so that we can be able to answer that need that might not be for that standard quality professional anymore. So it has caused a change in the way the organization
It's a resource for the quality professional within an organization to draw upon to deploy within his or her organization.
Yes.
Is that part of what you, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I'll say then is, how does that fit into higher education? So if everyone is expected when they go into workplace to have a mindset to recognize quality, but they're not quality professionals, ASQ then has an obligation to figure out, how can we reach out to higher education? How can we pull down on the academics that we have in the society to say, what is our role of quality? How can training come in at that level so that element is inherent in any professional?
Let's talk about membership. What is the current ASQ membership level?
So the current ASQ membership level, and why I'm hesitating a bit, is because we have traditional ASQ individual membership. Now we have the global organizational membership that brings over affiliates with it. So right now, I would say the just pure individual membership is probably around 55,000, but I can't give you extreme exposure to all those individuals that are coming over with organizations.
Okay. So is that in addition to the 55,000?
That would be in addition to the 55.
Okay.
So 55,000, what we would consider traditional ASQ
Yes,
members.
yes, and I'm giving you a round number because I don't.
I gotcha.
So I'm sure someone around here could yell out the exact number, but that's the best ballpark I can give you right now.
Do you have any ballpark of the affiliates?
I do not right now. Jim Templin could have been responsible.
Okay, all right, we should ask him. So at the heyday, I believe I saw a quote by Jim a few years ago that it was about 150,000. So long period of decline. And how would you speak to that in terms of what's going on with the profession? And furthermore, is there sort of an ideal number in terms of membership that ASQ is envisioning?
I'll pick up on my last answer for this. As you alluded to, there is that transformation going on of true 100% quality professionals to people expecting to have quality practices within their professional repertoire. I do believe that is part of why you are seeing a decline in those that identify as the subject matter experts, because we have to respond to the organizational trends, right? So whereas you might see a decline in membership, I can tell you you're seeing a massive acceleration in education. So the mission of a society, to me, is not just one component. It's what is the impact that we are having on the profession. So if we are able to bring together a very robust quality profession, that is those subject matter experts, though that are in that area, while also doing a mass amount of work to educate, how much do you value one over the other? I would prefer to say it is what is the impact of the society and is it advancing quality? I also believe there's going to be a lot of opportunity for growth as the world recognizes why quality tools in particular are needed to modern needs and crisis. If you were in Dr. Godfrey's session this morning, one of the projects he's working on is how to drastically decrease the maternal mortality rates. Yes. The way you do that is through quality. And so there needs to be a way for us to better communicate these pressing needs. Let us help you. Let us show you how we can improve. That got lost somehow. And one of the things I can't wait to work on with my board, and I think this would be a great question for Bland later on when he comes, is to say that how can we state the power of quality? And maybe that word quality, because it can be generically perceived to some that are not familiar with the discipline, how can we make sure we're using the right vocabulary with Next Gen in particular, where you see this entrepreneurial spirit? Man, they want to tackle every problem. Yeah. I love that. So how can we say, we want your spirit and we're going to give you our tools and let's get things done. Let's change the world. And so you can look at one thing of maybe from the 80s, 90s, there's been a decline. I'm hoping you're going to see an uptick when we start providing our tools to the future.
Let's talk about some of those tools. I mean, the quality profession is, in terms of knowledge and what's going on in industry, has changed a lot. And just in the last couple of years, look at just AI, like what came out of woodwork, and now AI is everywhere. Is what your average quality professional, what their knowledge needs to be, is that expanding now drastically? And is it becoming more important to be a data analyst, a data scientist, be familiar with what AI and machine learning and all those things? Is that part of what a quality professional needs now?
To an extent, I would say yes. And part of the other data findings that came out of the IOE benchmarking report on those needs for upskilling within the quality profession, number 2, I believe, was data analytics. Okay. Yeah. And then when the organization started to identify some of the gaps within their operations, understanding AI and some of those other elements was right at the top. I gave a podcast a few weeks ago that just looked at some of these digital transformation trends in quality. Now, whether or not the quality professional needs to have all those skills, that actually is dependent on their employer, I would say. Because if their job matures to bring in technology to their operations, take manufacturing as a prime example, suddenly if they're going to remain within that same area, the upskilling to adapt the technology that they need to be competitive, absolutely that's going to be part of their job. So for ASQ, that means we have to make sure we have those educational tools for them. And we've started to do that. We're rolling out the soft skills. Some of the areas, risk management now is perceived to be needed in all of those different things. So what I love is that now as we're getting that data, back, I can go to my great education team. We have a brand new education team at ASQ. It's fantastic. And say, this is what we need to look at in terms of development to get out there and say, hey, we got to upskill everybody.
Yeah. All right, let's return to something we were talking about earlier with you and Jim. ISO 9000. ISO 9001 certifications have leveled off about a decade ago, and then they've dropped, although there's been a slight uptick in the last 2 years. And ASQ is involved heavily, obviously, with ISO and influencing what they do. Does ASQ have any insights into what's going on and with regard to the level of certifications and maybe interest in ISO and what its impact on careers would be?
Yeah. So with respect to 9001 accreditation with organizations, I've heard some kind of mixed responses to why it potentially is declining in numbers, which kind of took me back a little bit. You have some saying that it's not rigid enough and our standards are above ISO. And then you have some below that say it's too rigid, we want to do our own thing. But regardless, they're still recognizing the impact of those primary principles within 9001. I also can say anytime you're going to have a system approach, if you want it to be successful, your foundation has got to be that 9001. Now, with respect to the standard itself and development, the group is going to look at next year whether or not 9001 should be reviewed. And so this is a critical time for those groups. And there's a lot of large organizations around the world that are making sure that they are a member of those tags, that they have a representative so that they have a voice. I actually went to the tag 176 that administers 9001, those meetings down in New Orleans a couple months ago. And there is a lot of thinking going on. There's a lot of talking going on.
Like a new revision?
About, well, just the potential, do we need to revise it? What is the meaning of it? Those are some really smart people. Yeah. If you want to get in the room with some really, really smart people, you jump into that Tag 176 group. And so I do believe the relevancy is there when you look at the problems ahead of us, because the only way to do things in organizational excellence, ES&G again being the prime example, is if you have a system. And at the end of the day, that's application of 9001, whether it be through 14001 or 26,000, all of those ISO standards rely on that systems framework. If the accreditation numbers are going down, I don't necessarily know if we can jump to conclusion that the practitioners aren't using it. That's the other thing that I'll state.
So in many ways, it's like we were discussing earlier, there's relatively few people that apply for the Baldrige Award, but there's a lot of people that use its framework.
Yes, including ASQE.
Including ASQE.
Yeah, and so this might, and I don't know if Jim hit on this, so I apologize if I'm repeating it, but Baldrige really is made for that upper tier. Like, they are the best. Yeah. IOE might be based on Baldrige Plus, I always call it, because of barriers disrupted and its agile approach to growth. It's for everyone. So no matter where you are on your excellence journey or on your advancement journey, it's a tool for you. That's different from Baldrige, that is meant really to show that you have accomplished that top tier element. And so they can coexist. I almost see a progression for those that adopt IOE and grow in that maturity matrix to Baldrige being the ultimate goal. And so that's something too that I think through IOE will make quality more commonplace, right? It's not just for the Baldrige Award, it's for everybody.
For a long time, and to a certain extent still now, people who worked in the quality field were considered, the cops, the bad guys, the
I thought that was the lawyers. As a legal background, I was like, good, I'm glad you didn't blame us.
Quality professionals are just above lawyers.
There we go, good. That's why we get along so well.
So, yeah, there you go. And, and it's always been seen as an expense. I mean, you talk to most CEOs, it's like, oh my gosh, we're paying so much money for this quality thing, whatever that is. And they see it as an expense, maybe a necessary expense, but an expense as opposed to maybe quality being a profit center. And I know at least a lot of our columnists keep trying to hammer that point on. It's like, no, guys, you got to be training your CEOs that this is not an expense. This is a way to make money. There's actually profit in this. How does the ASQ approach that?
Well, I won't answer for the whole society, but for me, there's just some simple ones. Like, do you want your customer to be happy? If your customer isn't happy, they're not going to buy your product. If you want voice of customer, if you want to understand how to apply that, you better embrace quality. Do you want your widgets to perform without defects? Well, you better embrace quality. The cost of those two things alone, of not having a good product and not making your customer happy, your business is going to fail. Yeah. And so maybe it's that kind of higher level conversation that needs to occur, that the light bulb goes off. But the other thing is the measurement element, right? You have to make sure that you have that objectivity and transparency to show the cost savings that comes out of it, or to the additional profit, or the time savings, or whatever it is, those KPIs that you're looking to accomplish, really having that objectivity behind it. Now, I do think sometimes at the C-suite, they don't use the word quality, though.
Right. Speaking their language is what's important.
And it is so
key
important
performance
to
indicators
do that.
or other terms.
It's so important to do that. And I can even say when I came into ASQ, so I had a quality and legal mixed background, I even adjusted my vernacular. Quit talking about regulation, talk about risk. Quit talking about, that's important. And because quality goes across all industries, quality professionals are always going to have a tough job because they need to adjust their vocabulary to whatever fits those specific areas.
Well, so here's a weird question, maybe ASQ is already doing that. So do you have, conferences, webinars, training, how the quality professional speaks to the CEOs. And in other words, there's the technical aspect of quality, but then there's also the sales part of quality. I got to sell this idea. I've got to convince my manager to get behind this program so that quality is better, so that we make more money, have less defects. But how do they communicate? Is there any kind of push in ASQ in the communication aspect? When
we talked about the connected journey with ASQ and ASQE, one of the additional elements was the creation of these annual reports and the different benchmarking studies that came out. Part of that intention not only is to meet the needs as a 501c6 that ASQE has, but also those reports become a tool for quality professionals to go back to their organization and say, here are the gaps, here's where improvement needs to be made in a way that might better resonate across those industries as they're recognized, or with relation to the barriers and disruptors that are going on. So that's one element of where we've tried to improve that. The other thing that I'll state is with all this transformation that we have gone through and the change in that value proposition, the ASQ board has recognized that that might impact how we do talk to industry or to government to say this is why quality is important. Our strategic planning committee actually right now is looking at what is that potential PR strategy that ASQ needs to pick up starting next year to get us to that next level. I believe later on you might be talking to Wanda Sturm, who is currently on the board of directors. Yes. She's one of the individuals that is kind of considering that strategy and why that's so important to critical to quality with all this change.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the regional and chapter activity. Do you see any changes coming? What's going on right now, but in particular, what is coming down the pike?
Yeah. So with respect to ASQ Communities, just in case anyone doesn't know, we have two different really buckets of community. We have a group that are technical communities, and that is a combination of your industry groups as well as your practice. So think lean, but also think automotive, right? Then on the other side, you have our geographic-based member units that are located around the world. With both of those groups, starting in 2018 and into 19, those groups themselves themselves reorganize them under new councils. Now, the acronym is TCC on the technical side, GCC on the geographic side. And those are the managing bodies of the governance of those communities. And so when we talk about are there any change coming with that, I have to first defer to those councils that manage it. But one of the things I can tell you that both groups is trying to adjust to because of the pandemic is the play of technology and the needs and wants of next gen. In the past, the geographic communities were largely in-person meetings. Maybe historically there was one place that everyone wanted to go. During the pandemic, suddenly everyone had to go virtual. And some people really liked it, but then also more people could maybe join meetings because they didn't have to drive somewhere. And so it brought this different type of opportunity of engagement that for the geographic communities, I give them so much credit because so many of them flipped on a dime. Not only that, but they started having virtual conferences. The Canadian groups in particular invited me to speak at some of their conferences and participate in meetings. And they were having a heck of a good time. They're calling in virtually, talking about hockey, having a beer. More people could go. They had a great bilingual virtual conference that might not have been able to have been pulled off if it was under the previous framework. So that change is going on. They're really wrestling with that. Now, the technical community side, I would also say they've reorganized themselves into hubs. They call them segments. And so instead of maybe them all being siloed, how do they collaborate and come together? That, I think, aligns perfectly as you see trends coming so fast so that they can pull upon themselves as experts to come together instead of sitting separately in those different forums before. So there's a lot going on both sides right now, a lot of great work. And we have over 3,000 member leaders in those communities that contribute so much to the society.
What % of those are in the U.S.?
Oh, gosh. I don't know that off the top of my head. Our council individuals will. But I can also emphasize that both groups are global. So the technical communities are global, have quite a bit of global participation. And then the geographic side has specific global regions around the world that they oversee.
All right. Last question.
Okay. Better be a good one. Okay.
It's my favorite question.
Good.
In 5 words or less.
Oh, boy.
What's the future of the quality profession?
I wanted to make sure I had 5. Problem solvers for the future.
Ann Jordan?
Wow, you're good.
That was quick, too. Wow. I didn't prepare that one, but it's true. And I stole that a little bit from Bland, if you're at his session, because he is a guru of the profession. Sure. And so we kind of came forward to him and said, how do you view yourself? Do you view yourself as a scientist? Do you view yourself as a writer? An engineer, what quality profession, what is it? And he said the most brilliant thing. He said, problem solver. And maybe when we talk about what is the future of quality and what is the right terminology, maybe he was onto something. Maybe we're the problem solvers.
I think maybe we should lead off this interview with that as the title.
There we go. I'll take it. Man, that came off fast. Wow. I'm glad I did okay.
All right, Ann Jordan, CEO, ASQ. Thank you.
It was wonderful. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right.